turn to the slide on the Spirit manifests itself. Paul teaches about the contributions from the gift of Holy Spirit. I'm going to look at my book on 1 Corinthians, and we'll turn to chapter 12. Paul gives a lot of details regarding how the Spirit manifests itself to the person in whom it resides. In 1 Corinthians chapter 12, and we'll begin in verse 7. But the manifestation of the Spirit is given to each person towards the thing contributing. For indeed, for which contribution a word of wisdom is given by means of the Spirit. But for another contribution, a word of knowledge according to the same Spirit. But for a different contribution, belief in the same Spirit. But for another contribution, gracious gifts of healings in the Spirit. Verse 10, but for another contribution, inworkings of ability. For another contribution, prophecy. For another contribution, through judgments of spirits. For a different contribution, genera of tongues. And for another contribution, interpretation of tongues. Verse 11, but the one and the same Spirit inworks or energizes all these, diverging to each person according as it deliberately determines. So Paul is continuing to describe and teach regarding spiritual things, spiritual matters. The manifestation or the evidence from the Spirit within a holy person, a Christian, comes from the Spirit and is given to each one, to each holy person. Because the Spirit within will communicate to you. So the manifestation or evidence that the Spirit brings is giving to light information, a contribution to each person, to each Christian, every Christian. It does not ignore one Christian and give all information to another Christian, or give it to a certain group over here but doesn't give anything to a group over there. It says the manifestation is presently given to each person. Why? Why would the Spirit manifest or evidence itself to each Christian? Towards the thing that is contributing. And that word contributing means that it is contributive. It brings something together. It confers help and benefit. To whom? To the recipient, to the Christian. So a contribution brings together as a whole unit. And we'll read on, as we read in verses 8 through 10, that there are 9 different ways of contributing. So all of them together makes one whole unit. The Spirit contributes to the person in whom it resides. No holy person is excluded from the availability to receive what is given, because a person could not be a holy person unless he or she had already received the gift of Holy Spirit. The gift of Holy Spirit contributes to each holy person, each Christian, each person in whom the Spirit resides. And how does it contribute? Let's break down what it's written in verses 8 through 10. We saw that Paul wrote, and it is listed in 3 groups. The first group, of course, is, in verse 8, word of wisdom and word of knowledge. And then we have a different kind of contribution beginning in verse 9. First one is belief. And then comes the other contributions associated with belief, gracious gifts of healings, inworkings of ability, prophecy, and true judgments of spirits. And then we have the last grouping, which is beginning with genera of tongues and interpretation of tongues. So these three groups are defined by the use of the word heteros. We can see that we began in verse 8, and then before Paul refers to belief, he has the word heteros, or a different type of contribution, different kind, beginning with belief, gracious gifts of healings, in-workings of ability, prophecy, and true judgments of spirits. And then Paul defines the next group, or the last or third group, beginning with heteros, a different kind, which is beginning with genera of tongues or kinds of tongues, and the corresponding contribution associated with genera of tongues, of course, is interpretation of tongues. Now, what do all of these mean? Let's have a deeper look at what they all mean. The first one that is mentioned is word of wisdom. And how is word of wisdom given? It is given by means of or through the Spirit, the gift of Holy Spirit within each holy person, each Christian. Wisdom refers to the skillful or expert application of God's personal knowledge, what to do as the most appropriate action concerning a specific situation or circumstance, even when complete knowledge may not be fully known. You don't have to know everything in order for God, by way of the gift of Holy Spirit, to give you wisdom regarding the situation. You just need to know what to do. You need wisdom. You need to know what the appropriate action is regarding a situation. So, you receive a spoken account or a word. A word, of course, could be made up of many individual words. It's the spoken account that you receive that contains wisdom. And then the holy person decides whether you will obey the wisdom that you receive from the Spirit within. Are you going to do what it says, what is contained in that wisdom, the most appropriate action to do in a particular situation, or are you going to ignore it? You see, the gift of Holy Spirit will give you the wisdom. What you do with that wisdom is your own individual responsibility. The gift of Holy Spirit communicates the information, then you decide, are you going to act on it or not? The next contribution that is listed and that is associated with wisdom is word of knowledge. And that, of course, is according to the same Spirit. Knowledge refers to the personal knowledge. You've got a deep, active, relative knowing of a situation. You know personally what is going on. So you receive a spoken account, and this spoken account contains knowledge, personal knowledge that you, Christian, receive from the gift of Holy Spirit. Again, it's up to you to decide whether you will do the appropriate action or not regarding the knowledge that you receive. It may be not to do anything, but just be aware of a particular situation or circumstance. The next contribution begins with the word heteros, which means other, of a different kind. So this begins a new group, beginning with belief. Belief refers to God's information that is made known to a holy person or a Christian to have confidence in, with assured certainty and surety. What to have faith in, what to trust in any specific situation or circumstance. That's the key. It is the belief that you receive from the gift of Holy Spirit within you regarding a specific situation or circumstance. Again, it is up to the holy person to decide whether you're going to take and receive that belief and do what is appropriate in that situation or not.